Yes, it's been me. This morning's message is entitled Time Well Spent. It comes to us from the writings of the Apostle Paul, his first letter to the Corinthians, the 12th chapter, the first 11 verses of that chapter. Before we get into that, I've heard so often, usually from Candy, that the messages that are given to you by the pastor, no matter where you are typically designed and aimed at the pastor. But what she says is, that's the message of the sender. She says that to me often because so often when I share with you, not that I'm assuming that you and I have so many similarities, but as I read, understand, study, and prepare things that address you from God seem to fit so well here. And recognition of those things then is the first step. The next steps are kind of scary and risky. It's a jump into a new place in our world for each of us. For most of us anyway, we feel leery of going to those places where we see things that may improve us or call us to be different than we are. Time well spent. It is the first letter to the Corinthians. It is the 12th chapter, the first 11 verses. And now about spiritual gifts, brothers and sisters. I do not want you to be ignorant. You know that when you were pagans, somehow or another you were influenced and led astray to mute idols. Therefore I tell you that no one who is speaking by the Spirit of God says, Jesus be cursed. And no one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but the same God works on all of them in all men. Now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom. To another the message of knowledge, by means of the same Spirit. To another faith, by that same Spirit. To another gifts of healing, by the one Spirit. To another miraculous powers. To another prophecy. To another distinguishing between spirits. To another speaking in another language. And still to another interpretation of tongues. All these are the works of one and the same Spirit, and He gives them to each one just as He determines. Gifts of the Spirit, gifts of the Holy Spirit, is different for each of us, and the Apostle Paul recognizes God's gifts in each of us. Many are different for each of us to be able to use and make a difference for God in the communities in which we serve and spend our time. And when we do, it is time well spent. So I ask you, when you hear that title, Time Well Spent, what comes to your mind when you hear that statement? I have to tell you that my reference would be something like this. In the springtime, after tending to the rose garden that we have, to see the flowers come bursting with color and fragrance. In the summertime, when you mow your yard, that fresh cut lawn has a wonderful scent, and those even rows of structured beauty. You know that's one of my favorites. And then comes a question to us by Elizabeth Grace Sanders. She is one of the journalists for the Harvard Business Review. And she asks this question of all of us. Are you proud of how you are spending your time? Stop doing what seems most urgent and do what is most important. Doing what's most important is an intentional shift for all of us, from what we seem to think is most urgent to what God calls to be most important. It's about rebalancing our lives, changing from one to another. And we must understand, first of all, what it is that is unbalancing our lives. Now, this is not a time when I say to you that technology is ruining our world. This is not a time when I say to you that we must give up cell phones and big TVs and computers and texting. Heaven forbid. What would life be like? Peaceful. Maybe. Frustrating. Maybe. Because you see, we've grown accustomed to those conveniences that call our attention and take over the focus of our lives. Back to the study of Elizabeth Sanders, she tells us these old cliches, nothing new to me, see about you. Prioritize family and friends. Heard that one before. Stay and eat healthy. Oh boy, have I heard that one before. Take vacations. Man, I have heard that one before. So here's how I'm going to respond to these cliches of prominence and importance. I'm going to shift right this moment from the urgent to the important. So I'm announcing that Candy and I will be taking a 2-year leave of absence where we will spend more time with our family. We will try to eat healthier. We will exercise. Well, just kidding. I don't think I could do that to my family. To spend full time with them doing healthy things. I'm not sure that would be healthy for them. What does Sanders have right? Is how easy it is for us to lose ourselves in this world of opportunity and infringements. Because you see, correcting those things has to be an intentional effort. We have to go about life in a very different way, changing who we were to who we can become. And isn't this the same message that the Apostle Paul is sharing with the Corinthians? Be proud of how you are spending your time. Focus on spirit work. Don't allow the world to distract you from applying your gifts and your talents into what can be God's work. He reminds us that, and then, of a time before Christ in their lives. Do you remember a time before Christ in your life? Paul's talking to them, remember when you were a pagan. Remember those times before you accepted Christ to lead and discern with you the things of God. Their lives were consumed by mute idols. I thought of that. What are mute idols? Mute idols are things we worship that don't talk back. Things like cell phones, televisions, tablets, emails, text messages. Again, that question does hit us right between the eyes. What is urgent and what is important? Here's a frustration for most of my life that I've shared with you before. When the Apostle Paul calls out these spiritual gifts, he gives us a laundry list of things that are spiritual gifts. And in my personal assessment of those, trying to assess the validity of the inventory he gives us, is where I got off track for so long. The gift of wisdom, the gift of healing, the gift of prophecy, speaking in another language, speaking in tongues, or interpreting someone speaking in tongues. But when I tried to assess my own personal inventory of God's gifts, those spiritual gifts, I was frustrated because they didn't seem to fit my life. I didn't see how they fit in today's world, maybe back in a time before. And so here's the gospel according to Pastor Tim. Here is the wisdom that I have accrued over this long journey of sorting through the things that God says, that God through Paul and the other writers and the gospel writers have told me. Truly, Paul's list of spiritual gifts is present in our world today. It's active, it's true. But God's gift comes to us in all shapes and in all sizes. And the question is borne out, do you have a special gift? Do you have a talent? Something that you can do well. Sometimes better than anyone around you. Sometimes just things that you are gifted in. The difference between a talent and a spiritual gift, according to the gospel of Pastor Kidd, is how you put them into service. How you activate those things. For example, if your talent is in art, and when you paint pictures, the nature of your artwork becomes a gift from God or not. Does the image that you create speak to others and bring them closer to God? Or does it repel them into a world of darkness? When the gifts you have been given are used to further the kingdom of God, that's a spiritual gift. And using your gifts to render a common good to the faith community and those around you makes your gift a blessing to others. And allows that talent to become a spiritual gift. Because it shows God's light into a dark world. Those are the things that make a difference from our community to the bigger community around. Have you ever heard the comment, which I've heard so many times, you know, I don't want to go to church. It's full of hypocrites. People who say one thing and do another. In the apostles' words to us, there's this struggle between ethical and theological natures. It's a little bit like what we should do and what we should believe. Both doing and believing are imperative. There's no doubt about that. It's a little bit like the song that Johnny Cash wrote in 1997, and the title was that No Earthly Good. The lyrics of that over and over, he's saying, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Think about that for a second. You're so heavenly minded that you are no earthly good. Preaching one thing and doing another. As faith believers, we are supposed to walk our talk instead of just talk our talk. Because when we do, those around us who look at us as God's children allows them to understand us better. Makes God seem closer and God's presence seem more desirable. I believe that people want to see things that allow them to experience the love of God for themselves. For the most part, they don't expect to meet God at church. Well, I guess that's a question for all of us. When you come, do you expect to meet God here? Amen. Most people are craving something profound, spoken very simply. They want to see not the historical Jesus, but they're looking for the experiential moment with Christ. Don't preach to me, show me. Allow me to experience God when I come there. Walk away with Christ at my side. And so, sisters and brothers, our gifts and our talents shared with others show them that God is real, that God is present, that God changes lives for the better. To do that requires only the basics of humanity. And if you were to say to me, Pastor Kent, I have no special gifts. I have no special talents that I can share with anyone. My response to you would be, are you human? Can you listen to another person? Can you look them in the eyes and help them carry their load? That too is a gift. That too is an offering. Or I guess it could be viewed as penance. Which is it for you? A gift, an offering, or something that you feel you have to pay back? Just a quick story. Because I think Paul's message is already clear. We are to take those God-given gifts and talents and not keep them to ourselves, but share them with the world around us. And Candy and I were married just a short time. We bought a little house way before ministry. We bought a little house. It was a 2 or 3 bedroom with 1 bathroom. It was about as big as the drum stage here. And when they built it, they built this single-car garage, separate from the house. Now, as the years went by and the owners came and went, somebody enclosed that with a 10 by 10 room. And that's about the size of that screen. And they called that a family room. Now, our washer and dryer were in the garage. And our TV was in the family room. And you had enough time to wait in line if you needed to use the facilities. And it was a time in my life when I was working overtime, a full-time night student. And it was somewhere around the 11 o'clock news when Candy said to me, you know, the switch for the light in the garage is not working anymore. And that's where we do our laundry. 11 o'clock, the news is coming on. I decide I can make this work. I got the step stool, I got the screwdriver. I'd already purchased the new switch. I told some of you the story. So I'm in there, and I'm wondering, if I flip the circuit breaker off, I'm going to turn off the TV and the clocks and the lights and the rest of the house because there were only a few circuits. So I got this little flashlight that I could hold in my teeth. No problem, I'll just turn the switch off. I take off the plate, put the flashlight in my teeth, stand, balance, lean sideways on the little stool, and I'm taking it all apart very careful because I know how dangerous this job is. I pull out the switch, I replace the wires, and as I'm pushing the switch back into the electrical box, my screwdriver, my brand new college ring, and the circuit all made connection. I'm not sure it was good, it was a news time at night or not, but every house in our neighborhood went black, went dark. And what I'm trying to say to you is, you can determine what your gifts and talents are. Being an electrician is not mine. I rely on those who have much more experience, successful experience. But what I try to do is assess those things that God has gifted me with. And then I try to share them with our neighborhood, with our faith community, with those around. Never taking credit as it being my gift, because it is God's grace. So here's the bottom line, sisters and brothers. It is about determining those things which God has allowed you to be good with, and then turning those into a spiritual gift by using those to grow the kingdom, whether you're growing it here out or around you in the world around. And whether they're big or small, they're a gift that many don't have. And sharing them makes a difference. And it allows others to see how we can get closer to God together. In doing that, we're serving a greater common good. That's what the world calls the kingdom of God. And all the children say, Amen.